Okay, today we're going to make a fur hat band. That's what this is. It doesn't have a top because basically I found that fur hats that have a top are way too hot to wear. So this lets the top of your head ventilate. This is lined with fabric, has a little bit of elastic for stretch, but basically you start by measuring your own head. You want it to be across your forehead and on the top of your head, back of your head. I have a hair clip on, so I'm just going to hold my fingers there. And it's about 22 and a half. And that's just a rough measurement because this is a coyote hide, tanned fur, and it's much longer than we need. We have usable about 34 inches. And so when you're looking at a coyote fur, you want the guard hairs to be part of your fur hat band. The guard hairs are these long, beautiful bits of the fur that shed snow. And this is a really nice addition. It's really colorful. And the guard hairs are the longest part. This is what keeps the snow sitting on top of the fur, and it works the same on your head. So you have a coyote skin. This inside's not very usable. So I'm going to turn this inside out. Okay. And I'm just going to turn this around this way so we can always be figuring out where the tail is. So this fur has some holes in it. We're going to work around these. They're not really a problem for you as a hat band because most hat bands are about, this is a 4-inch hat band. And I would make it anywhere between 3 and 4 inches. So I have this nice ruler that is 3.5 inches edge to edge. It's very handy for these things. So with this hat, I want to include the tail. So, and this is the center back. On the other side of this is the center back. And I have to adjust it down because of this hole. I'm going to take a red pen. This doesn't have to be exact because you're going to be lining this and it's somewhat rough. So we need to make sure that we have our more than 22 inches. So I'm going to cut it at about 25. So that's basically what you have is just a rough outline. The funny thing about fur is you can't just dig into it. We have the other side here. So we've marked our area, but we need to get to it. So we're going to come back to this side. I'm going to open this up. I'm going to take an X-Acto knife with a new blade. Okay. Okay, now it's nice and flat. Okay. You can't press down and through onto the cutting mat. You have to do the same kind of cutting, which is just a light hand. I'm going to start at this hole because it's there. It creates an easy edge. Here's the section you cut out, and this would be your hat band. Just loosely, it's bigger than we need, but you always want it bigger than smaller, and you would be able to have the tail down the back. Then you still have usable fur here and here that could be trimmed down to be making another couple of bands. If you ever want to do anything with the face, that's an option, but this not going to be part of our hat anyway. Although this is tanned, it's somewhat soft, but it's not absorbent. So any perspiration, any skin oils are going to go into this fur. So you want to make a liner. This is just cotton calico. I measured it earlier, longer than I needed, just a piece. It is 28 by 3.5, and it's going to be the liner on this, same way that we did the liner on this one, to have something soft and absorbent against your head. So there's two kinds of glue. There's one glue called Aquilum, which is a infinitely repositionable glue. And then you can always use rubber cement. It's up to you. I've used both. When this is a special order type item, you can get rubber cement pretty much anywhere. So this is longer than we need. So I'd want to turn in my edge. So since my head was about 22.5 inches, I'm going to cut this at 24. You're going to apply this and then you got to let it dry a little bit. Actually helps strengthen the hide for when it ages and gets brittle. This will help it hold together better. Do some on this as well. You just want it to stay in place. You don't want to saturate this. You don't want to soak it. So I'm just going to fold over the edge a little bit. I'm taking it right up to the edge of the tail. Just stick this down here. The reason I use this glue is because you can do this as many times as you need to. It's very repositionable. Very important to have that flexibility with fur. And so this is what goes on your head. And then you'll finish it so that the tail comes down and back. Okay, now for the hard stuff. Hand sewing. So you need a heavy duty thread. This is industrial sewing machine thread, but button and coat thread will work as well. And this is a cutting needle, and it has a chisel point on it, which is really helpful for pushing through. It's not essential. A heavy cotton darning needle will work, but with sewing fur, you're going to poke yourself in the finger inevitably, but the way you're going to have to do this is all by hand. Can't do it on a machine. And it's nice to have something to press against because the hide is hard. But if you do it like this, your stitches will never show. You'll never see that in there. But I'm going to go along the length of this. So I could feel that that was kind of a large stitch. See if we can find it. Yep. So there's our stitch. but it's covered by all these hairs, so you'll never see it. Now, some of you may be sewing perfectionists, and you may wish to make little dainty stitches, or you may wish to sew a blanket edge on this. That's up to you. I figure if I get it on my head, it's good. And so I've given up being a really picky hand sewer in favor of getting the project onto my head. Maybe I could do a nicer job, but I'm also trying to show you that this doesn't have to be hard. I'm really quite surprised that I have not punctured my finger yet, because I usually think that bloodletting is part of making a hat, so I probably have just jinxed myself, but I hope not. Get this off. I've run out of thread, so I'm going to just go through the fabric and the hide a couple of times and go right back through the middle of it. Maybe. There we go. That makes a knot. Now I'll pull out any fur that's in it. And then I'm going to go between the hide and the fabric and just hide the end. So I'm going to pull this through. I'm going to pull it back, snip it off, and it's gone. So all you see is that part. These are my stitches. They're not the neatest stitches in the world, but they're highly functional. So I've done the whole thing, and at this point it's longer than we need. So I'm just going to leave this thread with the needle at the end, because we're going to sew this up. I'm going to pick this up and just feel it against my head. I like to have some overlap. It feels better on the back of my head, and of course I can't see what I'm doing, but I want this tail to lay partially flat. I don't want it to stick out. I don't want it to stick up. I want it to just kind of lay there. So I'm just going to, with my thumb, put a mark here. But that's where we're going to overlap to. I'm going to cut off this little extra hide unlined part. And just pull it off. Okay, we're on this end, so I'm going to come back here all the way out with my long thread, put it through my overlap mark, then, and I know this shows, I know that this is here, it's okay for now. I don't have a knotted end, so I can pull it all out. I want to be sure before I really stitch it up that I'm right about that. So I'm just going to take a large stitch and take another large stitch on this side. I need both hands. Okay, all I want to do is be sure before I sew it. I don't want it to be too small and spend all the time sewing. Okay. Just let this drop again and put this back on my head. And it was a little tight for where I marked it, so that's why we do this. So, yep. So I'm going to move it just past where our line was. Here's our line, here's the edge of this, and that's going to be where we start to sew. So I'll make a mark on the fabric here. can see that. Now I'm just going to take the needle off this thread. Going to pull this all through. Find that right here. Okay. Because we want to overlap and stitch this nicely. Okay, my thread's here at the bottom edge. I can see my mark. And I'm just going to come over here and get into the other side. I want to anchor it there. And then I'm going to sew through here like I did all the way around. I'm not going to lap it. I'm going to sew through this way. But I wanted to have an anchoring stitch. And it's now going to be harder because you've got to make sure that you get through all the way through this one. And it's tough. Then through this one. Back up through here. And pull your stitch tight. You're still on your line. I'm going to come back up into here. Just seeing where you are. Again, you're still lined up. My line's right there. Here's where I'm sewing. You've got this area now. You're tight to this. One last try on. Still fits. Okay, so you want to anchor this so that it can't move. Knot it, and I just want to hide the end, so I just pushed it through the fabric there. I'll pull it with scissors and it's gone. All right, so we have this little overlap here. I'm just going to tack it. You may want to choose at this point which is up and which is down on your hat. Generally it doesn't matter, but the tail may hang better on one direction. I'll try to tack it in the center, but it may or may not make a difference. So I've tied a knot in the end of my thread. I'm actually going to come out here to where the hide is and push my needle through there and push it back through. So it's closed, the tail hangs down. So I like that position. So I'm just going to push through, back through. If you can't see where you're going, it's still loose enough that you can get through one side before you go back into the other. You're going to want to make a couple of loops because it doesn't get a lot of pressure, but you don't want it to come apart. So this is my second round, pushing it back through. Now I can't see what I'm doing, but I know where I'm going, back to this place here. I'm anchoring it. I'm going to tie a knot, hold my finger against it so it's nice and tight. And then I'm going to disappear this thread and trim it off. Okay, so as you turn this inside out, you can see that there's some areas where it's not, these show to some extent on the outside. So I'm going to do a little trimming. I did just put a new blade in my X-Acto knife because it does dull quite easily and quickly. You can just see the difference. I can just take it right along the top of my fabric, pull that little piece off. Again, just pull it away. Okay, so essentially, this is your hat. Tail down. We have a thin place on this hide. I'm not sure why it's missing here. It may have been the coyote itself, or it might have been how it was processed, but I'll make that the downside and put it on my head, and that's it. That's what you got. That's a hat.